But let's take another question. This is from David Clayton.
Has the time now come to abolish inheritance tax, considering it's simply a tax on already taxed income?
No. Is it time to... Right. And this was a question, of course, raised in the House of Commons. They were talking about inheritance tax and David Cameron's inheritance, which... well, all the rest of it. And dear Chakravarti, do you think it's right to abolish inheritance tax?
Yes, I agree with David. And there are more reasons. I mean, that's a very good place to start. It is indeed double taxation. There are other good reasons for it as well. And I think the most compelling reason, and this is why inheritance tax is it is the most hated tax in this country. There was a poll done last year by YouGov, and it was found that even people who don't expect to pay it hate it, because it goes against the very basic human nature and instinct to provide for one's family and leave something behind. And that's why, you know, it's just such an unnatural law that it's difficult to sell it to anybody, really. The third point, along with your first one and then my second and the third point, is that it is a hugely complex piece of legislation. It takes up 10% of our insanely complicated tax code, and it brings in about 0.7% of revenue. And there are so many different loopholes in that piece of legislation. You know, you can declare it as an agricultural land, and that means something else, etc., etc. And some people bring up the equality point about taking it from the very rich and, you know, giving it to someone else, you know, redistribution. The reality of it is that the super rich, the very people at the top, will always have different ways of getting around it, precisely because it's such a...
Okay.
Precisely because it's such a complicated piece of legislation.
Right.
So the people who are stuck with it, are the aspirational middle class right in the middle. And since 2010, the number of people paying inheritance tax has quadrupled. You know, so it really is the people in the middle who feel the pinch. So it really is, absolutely, we should abolish it. Yeah.
Ginny Jones, do you think it's right that parents should leave things to their children and should be taxed as low as possible, or are you in favour of inheritance tax as it stands?
Well, as a general view on tax, I'm very in favour of paying tax. I think it's at the cost of a civilised society. Taxes pay for the sort of things that we all need at some point in our lives, whether it's hospital care or schools or even roads. But inheritance tax, I do think, is iniquitous. I think it's absolutely wrong that it's twice tax money. I think it's wrong. There are better ways. If we closed a few of the tax avoidance gaps, these legal loopholes that were never designed to prevent people paying tax, but people have managed to find and get around the regulations. Or we follow up on some of the tax evasion that's happening, and which this government doesn't seem to be at all interested in getting to grips with.
So we've had another green rebellion before our very eyes, have we?
Do you know,
no inheritance tax.
I'm embarrassed to say I don't know what the party policy is on inheritance tax. So I hope I'm not rebelling on this as well. But I do think it's a ridiculous tax.
Okay.
It should go.
Okay, you sir, in the one to the fourth row, yes.
I'm proud to be a taxpayer, and I'm proud that I should be able to earn every single amount of money that I earn, and I should be able to spend or give it to whoever I choose that I want to give it to. I shouldn't have to be double taxed.
It shouldn't have to be double
No.
taxed. Okay, and you, sir, on the third row there, in the blue, yeah.
My big worry is we're creating a very selfish and insular society. This idea that tax in any shape or form is wrong. And as you rightly said, you know, we need these things to pay for the NHS. We need these things to pay for schools. We need these things to pay for benefits. And I feel as though there's quite a lot of people who feel as though I shouldn't pay any tax because maybe they earn enough to use private healthcare or, you know, private schools or things of that nature, things that I know a lot of the Tory party already enjoy. So my worry is we should be looking at tax as more of a moral obligation than a legal obligation.
Change the narrative. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Pay my tax bill if you like.
Who said
That's
that?
the problem. That's the problem.
You want him to pay your tax bill?
Well, if he's keen on paying tax, he can pay mine for sure.
Anybody else want their tax bill paid by him?
Do you need the NHS? Do you need the
Go on.
NHS?
Let him have a say.
I pay
No.
my taxes, but we
You've
pay
just
too much.
argued against
We
paying
pay,
no tax.
No, I pay my tax, and I'm happy to pay my tax, but we pay too much. One of my earlier questions would have been, why does it cost so much to be in Europe?
Okay.
It's ridiculous. It's because there's too many people with first-class tickets on the gravy train.
Okay. Owen Smith. And one of the things that came up in those comments, whether it's right, I think people are saying that giving money and then, you know, as long as you live 7 years, you don't have to pay inheritance tax. Is that right? Do you think people should Labour crack down on inheritance? Do you approve of people giving money to their children? What's your position on it?
It's entirely legal, but it is a dodge. It's a way in which people who've got lots of money avoid paying tax. And the one good thing that has come out of the extraordinarily unseemly mess about tax and the Panama Papers is that we are at last in this country having a serious conversation about tax. Because for 30 or even 40 years in this country, the debate about tax, the crucial debate about how we raise enough revenue to pay for our hospitals and our schools and all of the things to look after our children, our grandparents, has just sat there with neither party, frankly, bold enough to grab it. And I'm pleased that coming out of the Panama Papers, which has revealed, as Dia says, that so many people who are extraordinarily wealthy in this country and across the world are avoiding their taxes, and in doing that, they are robbing the rest of us.
Yes.
So,
Because they're robbing...
Okay. Why did Labour then raise the level at which you have to start paying inheritance tax by nearly by a third, from 215 to 325?
I think that was a mistake. I think that was a mistake, and I think the truth is that we've got a yawning gap in this country and across the Western world between a few percentage points of the population who've got an extraordinary amount of wealth and the vast majority of us who struggle to get by. And if we don't have wealth taxes, and inheritance tax at some level is a wealth tax, then we will continue to see larger and larger amounts of money gather at the top of society in the hands of those few percentage points, and we will not see the rest of society, including people here in Doncaster, enjoy the benefits of the social provisions that comes through those taxes.
So you would like...
So we need to be tough about this.
So you would like to reverse the change that Labour made when in office?
I'll
on the
certainly
threshold?
reverse the change that the Tories made recently, and I would, you know, I think
Which is their change?
Well, they recently changed inheritance tax and made it even easier to get rid of money in the last but one budget. They changed it twice, I think, since they came in. Crucially, the decisions they've made on tax reveal all you need to know about the Tories. They cut the top rate of tax for millionaires in this country. Everybody earning over £150,000 got a big bung. And what did they do in the last budget? They took money away from disabled people here and across Britain. The wrong priority.
OK, let me have... I'll come to you, Dan. The one up there, with respect... Yes, that's you, yes.
Yeah, I find the question for Doncaster, really, that question that was posed, quite ironic, because I see lots of women, my friends, like myself, who's going to lose my job in 2 weeks' time because the Tories have been stealing our tax, and domestic violence services are closing. Women's Aid is closing in 2 weeks' time. It's been here for 40 years, and it's closing because the Tories
It's all because... Just explain what you mean. Because of the Tories doing what, exactly?
Well, what we talk about the Panama Papers, well, everybody, it's like almost the elephant in the room. The question about inheritance tax is a small issue. The question of Google and Boots and you name it, Starbucks, the question of Tories. I don't know how you dare talk about Europe being corrupt when we have Cameron, who said that he would look after the vulnerable in 2010, and he has stripped us of everything. And this town is
Okay. All right. Thank you. No, that's not. Daniel Hammond. Thank you very much. Daniel Hammond.
Well, the question was, should we abolish inheritance tax?
What did you to address what she's just said? A major attack on your party.
record in Doncaster.
Well, I mean, first of all, the big tax dodge, if you want to look for tax dodge, is that Eurocrats don't pay national taxes at all. So, I'm sorry,
Totally irrelevant.
Okay, well, you tell me what Cameron did.
Come off it.
All right. Okay.
In 2010, we were told a lie. We were told that we had to take austerity. We had to lose our jobs, our libraries, our swimming baths. And do you know what happened? Cameron did. He did not look after the vulnerable. He made sure that the rich got richer and richer, and the gap is wide.
I'd like to get back to the original question at some stage, but since you say it's not reasonable to link it to Europe, all right. According to the Institute for Fiscal Studies, between 2010 and 2015, during the coalition parliament, all of the austerity cuts put together saved £36 billion.
It's a lie.
During that period...
Sorry, ma'am. Please, can you take the microphone away while Daniel answers? Because otherwise we won't be able to hear what he says.
According to the IFS,
we heard what you said. We want to hear him now.
I'm not so keen.
All right.
You may not want to, but everybody else wants to.
So we can all remember the circumstances in 2010. We had a bigger deficit than Greece. We were in a bad place. We had to make some savings. According to the IFS, all of those savings put together came to a total of £36 billion. Over the lifetime of that same Parliament, our gross contribution to the EU budget was £85 billion. Our net contribution was £42 billion. So it's all very well to say, oh, you mustn't link the two things. With that one clean excision, even if you take the net figure, we could have wiped out every single one of the austerity measures and still had enough left over to take a penny of income tax.
Let's talk about the cuts to disabled people.
When you're
priorities in your Tory government to cut
but if you're handing
taxes for millionaires,
million quid a week to Brussels, think of how much we could...
Daniel, I know you're very keen to go on making the point about Europe, but her question wasn't about that. And we know that even if it's Brexit, it's 2 years before or so while you negotiate to get out. She's talking about what's happened since the last election.
That's right.
And the measures that were taken since 2010. It's all right, ma'am. I'll do it for you for the moment. But answer her point.
I mean, and local services in Doncaster are obviously up to the council in Doncaster. But in terms of... and should be, and quite rightly so.
The government's cut the funding.
OK.
Can you feel the anger? Can you hear how unhappy people are in Doncaster and elsewhere about the fact that we know that we have been played by an ultra-rich elite in this country and around the world who fiddle their taxes, who salt it away in tax havens, and this government says that the biggest problem when it comes to the abuse is the abuse of benefits. In poorer communities, one is pursuing the poorest in society, and I think the abuse of benefits is wrong. But let's understand the order of the abuse that's going on. Just over £1 billion is estimated to go in the direction of abuse of benefits. The tax gap, that is from people who evade it and avoid it, is more than £30 billion. Going up. Now, I ask you then, why is it that the staffing levels in the HMRC, who deal with pursuing the richest in society, are significantly less than they use to pursue the poorest in society? It shows the priority of the Tories, and people should be very, very angry about that.
I know you said this in the House of Commons this week. You said they only had 300 people investigating tax evasion. We asked them today, and they say they have 26,000 people.
I asked about the ultra-rich.
Hang on.
I asked about the ultra-rich.
They have 26,000 doing enforcement, and more than 400 on high net worth, which is the ultra-rich.
Yeah, and as we know, the problem that came out of the Panama Papers is the ultra-rich.
OK.
And
now,
I'm asking,
All
why
right.
are there so few people relative to the rest of the staffing levels in the HMRC who are dealing with the ultra-rich, who are taking their money elsewhere and are not paying for the hospitals and are not paying for the roads, are not paying for public services in Doncaster, and they should be doing that.
Now, when Angus started speaking, there was a very loud shout of rubbish from somebody. I'd like to go to the person who, because I'm sure you want to say something, who said rubbish.
Oh, it must have been me again.
Oh, no, not you.